This episode of Made in America is brought to you by America's Inventorly and Home Talk USA. Home Talk is a proud member of the King's Broadcasting Network, which has been bringing you the best in home-based innovation since 1998.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America.
This segment is brought to you by the law offices of R.P. Baraska. RPB law offices have been bringing corporate-level legal expertise to the independent inventor community for more than 20 years. For all your inventing legal needs, trust rpblawoffices.com.
Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America. I am so proud to be able to do these episodes with you because I get to tell the stories. You know, the other guys do the politics and stuff and everything, but you know what? It is really fun to be able to tell the family stories of groups that have been making product in America for generations. And this segment is brought to you by Product Quick Start, Noah McNeely. If you need a prototype done and manufacturing set up, Noah McNeely is the man. I've got inventors who think that he walks on water. And so my guest right now is Josh Campbell from Campbell Scientific. Josh, thank you so much for being with us today. We are grateful.
Oh, thank you, Rita. I really appreciate the invite.
So tell everybody, what is Campbell Scientific?
Well, Campbell Scientific is a technology and innovation company that focuses on bringing science and technology forward for the benefit of humankind. That might sound a little auspicious, but essentially, we try and make a difference in the world by bringing technology to bear on real-life applications.
All right, let's dig down into that, Josh. You do dataloggers. And I mean, I know something about it. My daughter and my son-in-law both work for Campbell Scientific, so I've got a bit of it in, everybody. But, you know, they always talk about the dataloggers. I've seen pictures. I've gone out to see some of them. They go, this is ours. And it's so cool. What are dataloggers?
Yes, you know, that's a common question. And I like to refer to them probably a little bit more in what you would call a current term of edge devices. But if you can think of them as something that sits right on the edge between the digital world that we know so well and the analog world of the environment, let's say. And these data loggers or edge devices bring in the sensors and technology and take the temperature, they take the level, they measure whether there's ice on the road, and they bring that into some digital form and then transmit that back to somewhere where we can do something with it. And so the data loggers themselves are like a voltmeter with an integrated clock and quite a bit more technology and smarts in them.
Yes. And so every one of us out there at some point, almost daily, gets an advantage of the products you guys make.
Oh, absolutely. I would be surprised if anybody goes through a week without being touched by at least some process that our data loggers or edge devices are informing, because they're at most of the major airports in the United States and around the globe, measuring wind speed and direction, barometric pressure, visibility, cloud height, those kind of things. And they're also on major roads and transportation systems to tell if there's ice or if there's dust storms or things of that nature. And that's just the transportation side of things. We actually cover a few more areas as well in the renewable energy sector, as well as infrastructure. So bridges and dams are monitored by these as well.
So I'm sure you're the one that actually hiked up Mount Everest and put the one up there on top of the mountain, right?
Well, I wish actually. Yes, but no, it wasn't me.
So Campbell Scientific, family business.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How long and how did you get started? I mean, it's not like your father said, "Oh, let's start a data logger system."
Yeah, actually, it started out with my father and his brother as the co-founders, and they have an older brother as well. There were 11 siblings in the Campbell family, and my
Okay.
father and his brother fell right in the middle. But they actually had an older brother that came back from the White Sands Missile Range. He was in the Army Science Corps, and he had been in a 3-day conference where they were discussing how to measure the wind speed on the missile range and basically across like a mile section. And they wanted to know the crosswind on that range for various reasons. And this older brother came back through Logan on his way back up to Pullman, Washington. He was a professor at Washington State University there. And he dropped this idea to Eric and Evan and said, do you think maybe we can bring some of this new CMOS technology to bear with these other scientific applications? And the end result of that conversation about 2 weeks later was a what you would call penned out design to monitor the average wind speed over a quarter-mile section, which essentially is worked using a laser and a sensing device a quarter-mile away. And you would just see the refractive patterns as the wind blew them through that laser, and it would measure it on this CMOS device on the one end. That device was prototyped within a couple of months, demonstrated to the Army, and the Army put in an order for about 18 of them. And that was the origins of Campbell Scientific in about the fall of 73 and the spring of 74. So we're about
Wow.
52 years in now on this.
Wow. Just getting started.
Yes. Yeah. There we go.
Here you go. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's a family business, and you are in Logan, Utah, a beautiful area. But you guys do a lot more in the area than just run a business. Now, you've got how many employees there at the plant?
Yeah, we have approximately 400 here in Logan, but we have 16 other offices around the world, and not quite double that, but several others around the world, employees around the world as well.
So then you manufacture in Utah, but you've got salesmen, everywhere. All right, as far
Yeah.
as getting the stuff done, and then certain things are made in other spots. But what's made there in Logan?
Oh, definitely our core product, these edge devices, as you say, as well as some of our optical sensors for detecting. Uh, I'm trying to find the politically correct word, but sorry, that might not be the right statement. But essentially, we make some pretty advanced technology to monitor trace gases. So those would include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, those types of gases. And we are able to monitor how the Earth's surface interacts with those gases, either bringing them into the plantation or the environment and sequestering those gases or emitting those gases. And that's in our what you would call our infrared gas analysis line. So we make that line here. We design it, we engineer it, we produce it and manufacture it right here in Logan, as well as our edge devices and several of our communication devices that sometimes have a core component that are of a cellular, say, nature that we integrate into our communication peripherals because we have to do additional work to make them low power to work in remote environments. We also have spread spectrum radios and satellite communications that we integrate so that we can get those measurements back to some central processing point. So all of those are manufactured here in Logan.
So it's, we're going to have to take a break here for just a couple of minutes, pay some bills with our local sponsors. But what I want to know when we come back is what have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced, and how did you overcome them? Because I know everybody does, as the economy changes, the environment changes, just communities change. And so then you've got to be able to deal with some of that. And then, we want to talk about, the Campbell involvement in the community. Just because, any business that's going to be around for a while is going to be paying attention to what's going on in their community. And, you participate. It's what we do. And so, we want to be able to find out, How did you manage to do all that? So everybody stick with us. We will be right back for another segment of Made in America, because we love to be able to tell the stories and share the family's origins as far as manufacturing, and encourage some of you. It's like, you know what? You've got something going out there, get your kids involved because they might be the next generation. So stick with us, everybody. We will be right back.
This segment is brought to you by SearchQuest Patent Search. SearchQuest provides for a comprehensive patent search that searches the entire world and not just the U.S. Patent Office. Make sure that before you spend those big bucks having a patent written, you've done your due diligence by getting a comprehensive patent search. Use SearchQuestPatents.com for all your patent search needs. They scour the world for you.
And we are so proud to be able to tell the stories of companies that have been around for decades. So my guest is Josh Campbell from Campbell Scientific in Logan, Utah. And Josh, now you've said you've been doing this for about 50 years, you and the family. All right. So what have been the biggest challenges and how have you conquered them?
Yes. No, I appreciate that. 50 years, and I'll admit, I'm the second generation of that 50 years at the moment. I think some of the biggest challenges that we've seen have been centered around, at least in the initial phases of the company, unity. Because it wasn't too long after Campbell Scientific got started, which was started by two brothers, that their father came in, Sanford Campbell, my grandfather, came in and he gave a lot of guidance and direction. He was a dryland wheat farmer. He raised his children on a farm. And as they got going in these technology businesses, he still brought farm accountability to these businesses, which means you track all your calls, you track your long distance expenses, you track your budget for a calculator, you make sure you know where resources are going because they're sparse, and you get the most out of your assets that you can. That kind of set an ingrained culture within Campbell Scientific to be very resourceful, both in our development as well as our operations. That resourcefulness was then complemented by what I would call unity. There were about 10 people within the first couple of years that had almost equal portions of ownership in Campbell Scientific, a little unusual. No one person could just call the shots and say, I'm going this direction. They had to have some level of agreement. They didn't wait around for what I would say, or I should say, they didn't give consensus freely just because, oh, we need to move forward. They had their vibrant debates. But when a decision was made, they all unified and moved forward on it. And so having a dispersed power structure amongst 10 people, and then having an idea that unity can bring power when a decision's made, we're moving forward together, brings the execution and motivation power to move forward. That is what really got Campbell Scientific through an era where they could have made some very significant mistakes, but avoided those because they had a wide, broad base to pull ideas and information from. And then they were able to get through some of the tough times because they were all together in whatever action they decided to do. We've tried to bring that forward. That might sound a bit idealistic, but that's how it happened. And then as it went on into the 2000s, I would say some of our challenges or misfortunes that were difficult came about when we couldn't achieve that unity. And I would say one that I reflect upon is another US-based company that we had acquired. It was in the renewable energy sector. They were monitoring renewable energy and giving the power providers information about how much energy was being produced by their solar plant. And we acquired them and attempted to integrate or more vertically integrate our equipment manufacturing all the way up through this integration and then through actually providing the data. But in the process of acquiring them, it became apparent after about a year's time that they had different ideas than we did, and we just couldn't bring about a consensus. And eventually we had to part ways, and a couple of years later, they found themselves in bankruptcy. I wish they would have found their own way, because I'm not saying the way we do it's always the exact right way. But I would say that they didn't adhere to or share the common idea of resourcefulness in a startup scenario, which is kind of ingrained and part of who we are. And they were a little bit more consumption oriented to the point of hoping to make it big and move on. So I would say those are some of the challenges that we've dealt with and kind of how we've pushed forward to get through them.
Yeah, that make it big before you're ready to be big is, a bad step or a bad ego thing. We see inventors will do that and they'll say, well, we hit $1 million and I can do it myself. And the next thing you know, they're not able to do anything at all because they've reached a wall and didn't realize that that's what it was going to, they were just going to get to the point where they couldn't do it anymore. And whether it's, the money, the reach or whatever, not all that unusual that it is a common mistake. So you guys sell now all over the world.
Mhm.
All right. You originally started selling to the military. Was it the military or the
Yep, that was our first customer.
Okay, so the military, not everybody can cross that bridge where you're selling to the military and then to everywhere. How'd you cross the bridge?
Yeah, I think our initial bridge crossing came through academia, to be honest. We actually, yes, our first client was the military, but then when we got to academia, it was in the area of agricultural research. So we looked at soil moisture, soil temps, and all those things. And we started to sell into researchers and their projects. What came about from that, though, was people that would do sabbaticals and then they would go to other areas of the world and they would go back to their universities and they loved our equipment. And that's what really started giving us an international footprint was through universities.
Wonderful. I did not know that. So, and you guys are still very active in the universities there in Logan and all of that. And I know that there's, a good influx of students from around the world there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those steps that you made when you came back. But, as you've reached out, are there any countries that you're looking to hit?
Oh, at the moment, I would say some of our larger initiatives are to try and get data where data is not, particularly for operational and forecasting meteorology. And the more data you can get from ground-based stations, the better your forecasts can be. And there's a dearth of measurements throughout Africa as well as Asia. And we have some pretty focused efforts to try and work with countries in those regions to get more measurements so that they can have better forecasts, protect life and property in those areas.
Amazing. So we're going to be right back. We've got a couple more questions for Josh when we get back. I'm going to go pay some bills. But if you are out there and you've got a company that's been around for a long time and you want to be on Made in America, please give me a call because you know what? We can't wait to have you on and tell your story as well. So stick with us. We'll be right back with Josh Campbell. Learn some more about Campbell Scientific and the family that started the business 50 years ago. So stick with us, everybody. We'll be right back. If you're an inventor or you know an inventor out there who would just like to be able to have a conversation with other inventors, join the Inventors Roundtable. It's free. The meetings are virtual, so you can be anywhere in America and talk to another inventor. And for a lot of folks out there, understanding the process, being able to ask questions, getting good service provider information is critical to the inventing process. So, got questions? Want to join? It's free. inventorsroundtable.org. Thanks, everybody, for being with us for this segment of Made in America. It is brought to you by Wood and Wood. WeNeedGutters.com. If you have got a gutter on your house that's dropping that water where it should not be going, WeNeedGutters.com. Gutter diverters. That's where you go. I got mine. I put it on myself. Easy, inexpensive, and oh my God, now the water doesn't run on my head when I'm going in the front door. So that's where you want to go. WeNeedGutters.com. My guest for this segment is Josh Campbell from Campbell Scientific. And, we're talking about some of the fun stuff of how you got to go from, Utah to, military to international all over the place. And so, what are the fun stories about selling all over the world?
Oh, I think there's a lot of different aspects to that. I appreciate you asking that. One is that you get to meet all sorts of different cultures and realize there's several ways to do things. But another one is the opportunity to make a difference in someone else's lives. And then you begin to realize that it's not just someone else's life you're making a difference in, that trickles on and comes back around to you. I would say one example that was very fulfilling was after ISIS took over the Mosul Dam just upstream from Baghdad. They did not do the grouting that was required to keep the foundation of that dam sound. It had to go 24/7. It has a karst base and it erodes. That dam does. And if that dam were to fail, the entire city of Baghdad would be washed downstream. After the U.S. forces took that dam back over from ISIS, one of the first things they did is come to us and said, we need to get instrumentation on this dam so that we know where to grout first and as quickly as possible. That project was confidential for quite some time, but we got the instrumentation on the dam, and they were able to resume their grouting again and prevent the dam from failing. And our little part was trying to help them understand where to grout, but everybody coming together to protect an entire city, that's a bit of an extreme story because of the situation. But we have instrumentation in all sorts of applications similar to that on a daily basis. So that's really rewarding.
I am sure it is. That is just amazing. Congratulations. You're right. It's got to feel good when you have that kind of impact on something so historic. I mean, what a tragedy to lose the city of Baghdad and the lives. I mean, just, the history and the lives there. So what does the Datalogger do on the top of Mount Everest?
Oh, yes.
I didn't know there was any air up there. So, what does it do?
Yeah. Well, basically that particular system is monitoring the meteorological parameters right up there in an area or an elevation that has not been continuously monitored ever in the history of the planet that we know of. But it's your sunshine, it's your wind speed, your temperatures, all of these things. And Mount Everest is a very unique location because when the jet stream comes through, it's high enough that it's sometimes in the jet stream. And here you have a weather station that can just sit continuously in the jet stream and measure things that we haven't. Yeah, sure, we have measurements of jet streams through aircraft, but not from a terrestrial-based station on the planet. They're learning some very interesting things. I would say Baker Perry is probably one of the forefront researchers on this type of application, but they're monitoring things and understanding that some of the ice that we're seeing on top of Everest is much older than we originally thought, meaning that the layers above are actually coming off faster than we thought. Those types of things. You're seeing wind speeds and sustained winds that we didn't really understand or know were there for certain amounts of time. But it also provides real-time data for those that are climbing Mount Everest and allows them to get more accurate forecasts and hopefully give them a safer climb to the top of the mountain as well.
So you literally go from top to bottom.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we're in the bottom of the Mariana Trench, but I could be surprised. Maybe someone's put one there.
Yes. So and that's amazing science. You get some of those kids growing up. So that brings me back to then, Campbell Scientific, your outreach in the community. I know that you're very much in the community at throughout Utah, but specifically in Cache Valley. So what are some of the things that the family does to, let everybody know you're there?
Oh, yes. And I want to say we're actually in several communities, almost a dozen and a half around the world, and we try and push into each of those communities with some sort of charitable aspect. But we have a unique setup here where we believe that the profits of the company are the stewardship of the shareholders. And so one of the things we do is we dedicate 10% of our profits to be given away at the direction of our shareholders, pro rata their shareholding. That allows the shareholders to direct these donations to entities that they can see might benefit or might need them in the community. In addition to that, we have one sister company that has set up a foundation that not only provides funds for these types of projects, but gives 2 days of paid time off for their employees to go contribute labor to these types of initiatives. And these are ways that we use to try and make a difference in the community, sponsor things, bring knowledge and interest to the problems that the world faces. And it's so far it's worked quite well. We've done everything from animal shelters to universities to I would say lightning field detection networks for youth sports. I mean, it's everything in between.
Well, it's wonderful because, when those kids see you guys out there and you're
Mhm.
doing something that makes life better for them, you know what they want to study when they go again? They want to study science. They want to go into science. They want to go and do an internship at Campbell Scientific. And it's a wonderful way for you to get, those brilliant minds creating at a young age, and then want to be able to work with you to make life better for the next generation.
Mhm. A lot of it's about exposure, just simply getting these young minds exposed to the opportunities at hand. It's amazing what can happen when you take like a high school kid that's interested in physics and you start to explain how lasers and infrared light can be utilized to monitor gases in the atmosphere. And the light starts coming on between their classroom and reality. And from there, it just snowballs.
I can only imagine because, it's like I said, I've got a daughter who works there and she's got a PhD, and science is,
Mhm.
who would have thought, you know? And so, it's wonderful to see, the way that now her boys are participating in a lot of different things there. And, they're the future engineers. They're the ones that are going to make a difference. And that's what you are helping people around the world do with those brilliant young minds.
And I'll admit, you have a phenomenally organized daughter that works here as well. And just like you said, those kids, your grandkids at the time, at the discretion of shareholders, they've decided to support things like the Stokes Nature Center, and also some STEM robotics opportunities. And those kids participate in those and they start to see the linkage. And it's really nice. What's really rewarding is when you see our employees able to go home and share the technology that they're working on with their kids and they light up. That's when magic starts to happen.
It does. It truly does. So what are the changing things that you're seeing happening now that are going to make Campbell Scientific, maybe fold up one thing but create something else?
Right. Um, there are some challenges on the horizon that I hope are temporary with regard to being an international company with tariffs and manufacturing and all that. And I won't dive into those other than just to say those are things we deal with. But I would say some of the bigger things that we see morphing as time goes on is more integration. You can't just make the sensor. You just can't make the data logger. You can't just make the communications. You have to make more and more of an integrated system. And people are used to buying those and putting those integrated systems to work. Their interface is the software. A lot of times people used to get into the nitty-gritty of programming and these types of things. Anymore, it's the software. So they have to move forward. So I would say we're probably more pushing into making things more integrated and more software oriented.
Yeah, back 50 years ago when you were starting, software was starting, to get a hold. But, it's come a long way in 50 years. And if
Oh
you weren't
yeah.
shifting with it,
Yeah, from DOS to AI now is kind of where we're looking.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
instead of programming a unit what to do, you want to be able to say, here's the unit I have and here's what I want it to do, and it programs itself. That's the type of stuff we're working on.
We're going to talk about a little bit of that when we come back here. We're going to take a break and pay some bills. And I've got a big question for Josh when we come back. So stick with us, everybody. We're going to have some fun.
Hi, this is a training pull-up for little boys, and it's a great product to use. It makes it easy for the parent and the child when learning how to potty train. The coolest part about the product is that you don't have to take the child's pants all the way down every time that they need to use the restroom. You can just open this part here, and the child can tinkle through here, and it makes it easy for the parent and the child. It's a great product, and I cannot wait until it hits the market.
And thank you for being with us for this final segment of Made in America. Guest for this episode of Made in America has been Josh Campbell. Josh, it has been a pleasure to visit with you. And we left the end of the last segment talking about AI. And so, I have seen some really smart AI, and I have seen some really not so smart AI. How do you deal with that? How do you test it? How do you make it do what you need it to do so it seems like it's doing what it's supposed to do?
Oh, that's a that's a very in-depth question. But you're right. A lot of times AI can hallucinate and give you some type of output or some type of result that you just weren't planning on. In this particular realm, there's a few different places, and I think it's important that we, as companies, understand the entire value chain that we deliver. And we have to be able to go to how does AI influence one aspect versus another? For example, internal business processes such as order entry or such as creating quotes. Sometimes AI can help significantly with that and help you be more efficient. When you start to push forward, though, one of the areas that we focus on is helping National Meteorological Services get the surface observation data necessary to run models to then predict the weather or give a weather forecast. One of the really big hopes in AI is that AI will be able to replace what's now numerical weather prediction models with artificial intelligence weather prediction models, thereby reducing the required compute power by about 100 to 1,000 times. So in
Wow.
other words, instead of having a supercomputer, a country can run a MacBook Studio with a 40-core processor and AI and produce a 3 and 5 day forecast. That's the difference in compute power. The difficulty with AI is the training. It's it's not predicted. It's not a predictive or numerically done model. It's actually out there using its AI intelligence to say, based on these conditions, here's the outcome. There's still a lot of research and I would say effort that needs to go into those models to ensure that they will pick out the extremes. Because while the extremes may only happen 1% of the time, when they happen, they are the impactful events that cause billions of dollars in damage. So are these AI models going to predict these extremes like the numerical weather prediction models could? Hopefully even better. But at the moment, it's still an area of investigation. So we're cautious, but I would say we're optimistic that if not AI, what technology is going to continue to enhance our ability to produce value and protect, I would say, the citizens that utilize our goods.
Well, just when we look at technology, I mean, things have come a long, long way. Back in the day when I was growing up, people would stand out and watch it rain, and watch the river rise. It's like, do you realize there is a wall of water coming? But there was no warning system. There was nothing to go. Now you get, sometimes you wish you had more warning system, but when we had the big flood out here, people were notified it's coming, it's on the way, and people had time to get out of the way. When I was a kid, the flood right there in my hometown killed 250 people overnight because they didn't know to get out of the way. And here, when Hurricane Elaine came through, you know, people did get out of the way. And so we were very lucky because we lived right above an area that, we sat on the deck and watched the houses float by, but not a single person was injured.
Mm.
And it was because we had warning.
That's amazing. And sometimes the warning's only 15 or 30 minutes. Sometimes it's a day or two. But whatever warning you can get can save lives. That's
Yeah.
definitely an aim for us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things is when a dam breaks, that
Yeah.
without that, data that you guys are doing that shows a dam is in danger,
Mhm.
it is starting to crack, it is starting to leak, get out of the way. People don't know because they're generally not standing there watching a dam.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the structural portion of the dam, and sometimes it's the amount of water that falls in a particular catchment basin that overwhelms the reservoirs within that area. And in fact, within the last couple of years, the Mediterranean area has had some very unusual weather due to the surface temperature of the Mediterranean being higher than normal. And there was one such event in Libya, of all places, and they didn't have the stream gauging stations and the surface observations necessary to predict the dams that may fail. And they had two dams and two dams that failed that basically washed out two towns and 5,000 people overnight. And most people don't even hear about that. But
Yeah.
that's the type of tragedy that you can prevent with this current technology.
Well, we are grateful that you were on today to share with us so that everybody knows who is saving their life, and it's not just about, wind speed, but it is about, those nasty changes in a quick weather change that Campbell Scientific helps people understand. It's like, get out of the way, get in, get sheltered, and stuff. So every day you are impacted, whether we're getting on a plane, driving down the highway, or looking out for nasty weather. Campbell Scientific, you're it.
That's right. Thank you. Yes, it's been a pleasure.
It's been wonderful to have you on. I hope you'll come back. You know what? Next time I get out there to Logan, I'll have you give me a tour of the place, and we'll get you on again. So when people come out there to Logan, Utah, all right, Cache Valley, it's a beautiful ski area, lots going on. Do you do public tours?
Well, let me just say this. If somebody is interested enough in what we do, if they could just reach out, we'd be happy to show them around. You bet.
So, and CampbellScientific.com?
CampbellScientific.com, our general frontline phone number. If they call in and say, I'm very interested in what you do, our front office staff can get you connected with the right person. And I give tours time to time from people that are just very interested in what we do. We don't have a general slotted public tour, but I'm happy to show people what we do if they have that interest.
Excellent. So if you're out there and you've got kids that are wanting to be an engineer and a scientist, and you say, oh, let's go check out Campbell Scientific, give Josh Campbell a call, and he will make sure that someone can show you around and get you all excited. Thank you so much, America, for being with us for this episode of Made in America. I will be back in 2 weeks. And the chairman's group with Josh Modal will be on next week. So you know what, everybody? Join us next week for Home Talk USA, Invent America, and Made in America, all productions of King Broadcasting System. Have a wonderful week, everyone.